What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astrodfs bringing you a brand new video. Today's video going over the NFC East, kind of the opportunities and the outlook as of right now going into the season, right? So additions can still be made, right? Zeke kind of got on the Cowboys later than people thought, just because they thought everyone, including myself, thought they were going to go running back in the draft, and they didn't, so Zeke signs. But nonetheless, additions can still happen. Guys can get cut, injuries. But this is today on the outlook if these rosters were kind of like this going into the season. So for quarterback for Dallas, plain and simple, Dak is their quarterback. Cooper Rush, the backup, right? Cooper Rush, 3 months younger than Dak, so not a lot of opportunity if Dak, kind of underperforms. Obviously, Trey Lance is there too, but I don't know who they would really go for the backup. I would assume Cooper Rush, but Dak is the guy until he gets hurt, right? I don't think performance is ever going to affect Dak until he's a lot older, right? Obviously, people have their says against him, but he's their quarterback. Running back, it got interesting when Zeke came back, right? Everyone thought they were going to go running back. That would be the guy to go to. The opportunities were there. The job was there too, right? So Zeke goes back. They get Royce Freeman. Now looking at Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman, Deuce Vaughn. Zeke, I would imagine, right? I think Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman, they're all going to get some type of work. They're going to be a committee. Obviously, one guy's probably going to be, not dressed in the game. But Zeke seems like the guy, especially in the goal line. It sucks for people that wanted a rookie running back there. I did too, but I do think Zeke is one of the better goal line backs, and that's what Dallas struggled with Tony Pollard last season. So Zeke kind of seems like the guy. If you want to take a shot on Rico Dowdle or Deuce Vaughn, go for it, but they're not in the best spots right now. Obviously, next year's a new year, but as far as the outlook this year, Zeke isn't going to be a work bell running back at all, in my opinion. He's definitely going to be their goal line back. Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, those guys are kind of more explosive. You've seen Zeke of what he is. Just going to get you, 3, 4 yards, 5 yards, stuff like that. Going to get some longer runs, but for the most part, he's going to be kind of the short yardage back. Good pass blocker, but we'll see what it looks like. But Zeke is the RB1 as of right now. Wide receiver, you got the franchise wide receiver who's holding out right now. I imagine that will get sorted out soon. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 1. Brandon Cooks had a pretty good year last year in Dallas. Obviously, Michael Gallup is gone now. They don't really get anybody in their wide receiver draft. Ryan Flournoy. They get, but Jalen Tolbert kind of seems like that guy. And this is one I've been waiting on. The crazy thing is the age of Jalen Tolbert and the age of CeeDee Lamb, right? That's something that stands out. But Jalen Tolbert, more than likely going to be the wide receiver 3. Turpin definitely got some work last season. Jalen Tolbert, in my opinion, when he got some targets, he made some good usage out of them. Got a few touchdowns. So another year of experience, another summer camp. So Jalen Tolbert seems like the wide receiver 3 on that offense. He's going to be the Michael Gallup. So that's kind of the opportunity there in Dallas. Obviously, you can get Brandon Cooks, but as far as CeeDee Lamb, he's a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. You can make the case for Chase, Jefferson, whichever. I think it's really between Lamb and Jefferson, but Chase is still there. I don't know why people are starting to get lower on Chase than they did before, but yeah, those are the 3 wide receivers. Tight end, Jake Ferguson. Shoemaker, Hendershot are definitely going to get their opportunities this season, but for the most part, it's going to be Jake Ferguson. And he's a solid tight end, right? Always just going to be a solid tight end for this team. Still 25 years old, so young enough. Played well enough, especially in the red zone, was a big red zone target. So another solid guy to have on your rosters. If you have him, you're feeling really good, especially with Michael Gallup being gone, Tolbert being there. Obviously, like I said, Tolbert got some of those red zone carries, but as far as the run game goes, that kind of makes Jake Ferguson a little bit better in that aspect. So that's it for Dallas. Now we go to Philadelphia, and again, another team with a franchise quarterback and Jalen Hurts. They acquire Kenny Pickett through trade. Their running back, DeAndre Swift gone, Saquon Barkley in. They get Will Shipley in the draft, I think he's in a pretty good spot to compete with Kenneth Gainwell. Obviously, much younger, and what you're getting, like, you're paying pretty much the same for either one of these guys. If you want to acquire them, Gainwell lower, but they're around the same price. Obviously, the youth in Will Shipley, Saquon's injury history, although I think he's been fairly healthy for the most part the last few years since the Giants have made their run, but history is that, right? I never predict injuries, but that's kind of what we're looking at for that. I like Will Shipley. I think he's a great add if you can add him late in drafts. He's a good running back pickup, a running back 2 to have. Obviously, Saquon is a bell cow running back. Even for this team, he's going to be a bell cow running back. So Will Shipley, Kenneth Gainwell, going to be competing for the RB2, and I think Will Shipley takes it. Then wide receiver, this is where it's interesting. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Anana Smith, they draft Paris Campbell, they add Johnny Wilson, they draft, Devontae Parker retired. I kind of like Devontae Parker being the slot receiver. I would imagine it's between Smith, Campbell kind of fighting for that wide receiver 3. I don't think as much Johnny Wilson unless he stands out. Although being 6'10", I imagine they're going to try to find ways to get him on the field if he does end up making that 53-man roster. That's a huge height advantage, especially in the red zone. It's like having an extra tight end out there, right? You look at the height of these tight ends, and then you look at Johnny Wilson. It's a big body, 237. So if Johnny Wilson can make that 53-man roster, I think he's really, not investing anything, but he's a guy you could definitely have on your taxi squad and just see what happens going this upcoming season, right? They need a wide receiver 3. Whoever the wide receiver 3 is, if they could stand out, right, they're in a really good offense behind 2 elite wide receivers, and Philly has been looking for that 3rd wide receiver for years now. It's kind of been the missing piece for him. But with Dallas Goedert, their run game, they really haven't needed it. But it has come up in certain games where it would have been nice to have. So I think between Smith, Campbell, and Wilson, those 3 guys are going to compete for the wide receiver 3 spot. And then tight end is pretty much Dallas Goedert. C.J. Uzuma is there. Albert O. Dallas Goedert's the guy until he's not, though. Unless he gets injured again, Dallas Goedert's going to be the guy. Uzama, Alberto, if you want to take a shot on them, go for it. I don't think there's a lot of value there unless Dallas Goedert goes down. If you're holding on to him, right, you have to have Dallas Goedert, in my opinion, if you're holding one of them. Because that's the only thing you're making them for, right? You don't have usage out of them. They don't run a whole lot of 2 tight end sets a lot, right? So when they do, Dallas Goedert's usually the target for those tight ends. So C.J. Uzama, Alberto, if you're holding on to them, I would imagine you have Dallas Goedert to just back up your tight end room for that Philly team. And then we move on to the New York Giants. And this one is where we get a quarterback kind of opportunity. Daniel Jones going to be the quarterback taken in the 2019 draft first round. Drew Lock, 2019 draft round 2. In all honesty, people like Daniel Jones. I don't. I think his good fantasy season was a fluke. He got there for the rushing aspect, has looked terrible passing. Granted, hasn't had a good wide receiver room at all. He's had, prospects, some young guys, but really hasn't had a wide receiver 1. Like, maybe not even a wide receiver 2. These guys are wide receiver 3s, but now he gets a wide receiver 1. But I think Drew Lock, if the Giants start to fall off pretty quick, I want to see Drew Lock in this offense, right? I think Drew Lock can definitely succeed with the talent that they have there. Very young talent in the wide receiver room, tight end room. Offensive line got upgraded, right? Their defense, especially the box, got upgraded. But offensively, I think it's a very young, untapped potential offense. And I want to see Drew Lock. I think he could do better in the pass game than Daniel Jones and make it more efficient. With Saquon gone, they have Devin Singletary. He kind of fills in. They get him on a multi-year deal. I'm not the biggest fan of Devin Singletary. I liked him in Buffalo. I liked him last year in Houston. I knew he would kind of take over Dameon Pierce. But now he's in the Giants, and I really don't love it. I don't love... Their passing game is not good enough to where Devin Singletary could be a star like it was in Houston. He was so good in Houston because their pass game was that good. It gave him more opportunities, right? I don't think it's the same case in this scenario. I like Eric Gray. Tyrone Tracy is 24, right? Obviously, Eric Gray is they're the same age. But going to be, Eric Gray's got a year on him. I would imagine Eric Gray is the running back too. If you want to take a shot on Tyrone Tracy, just because he's a rookie, go for it. But I would rather have Eric Gray just because he's got a year more experience under that offense than Tracy does. Wide receivers. The wide receiver room I like. I think it's very, like I said, it's untapped potential. They add Malik Neighbors. They've had Wandell. They've, got Jalen Hyatt last year. Darius Slayton's been a very solid wide receiver. He's probably been the most consistent wide receiver they've had. He's had injury issues, which has been his inconsistency, but when he is on the field, he's been very solid for them. Isaiah Hodgins is another guy in there. But I think their wide receiver room is very good, right? They need a good quarterback that can lead this wide receiver room, and they could do some damage, in my opinion. You get a quarterback in these wide receivers, you could see a lot of great plays out of these wide receivers. I think Wandell, for where he's kind of valued at, is a good piece to add, right? We haven't really seen him. He's been unhealthy. The team has not been good. Jalen Hyatt kind of, had to earn his snaps. Team just was bad with DeVito as the quarterback. They had to try to win other ways, but these four guys, even Darius Slayton, he's only 27. These guys are good, especially for best ball drafts. If you're doing underdog or if you're doing dynasty best balls, these guys are very good pieces to have because I think the potential is there if they can work out the passing game, even if it's Daniel Jones, right? I think Drew Lock is better for the passing game, but even if it's Daniel Jones and he could get it going, these guys can really, really put up some good numbers. Now, if that happens, I don't know. The Dayball system, kind of worked a few years ago. Obviously, the passing game, like I said, wasn't as good, but now they have a first-round receiver, top 3 receiver in the draft. People are going to have this debate until the season is over of which of these 3 guys is going to be the number 1 receiver at the end of the year. But the talent is there. And then we get to the tight end, which also has some opportunity. Darren Waller expected to retire, it sounds like. Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson would compete. If you go and look at the numbers, Daniel Bellinger really hasn't put up some good numbers. I think Theo Johnson can really take some competition and possibly boot Daniel Bellinger out of there. Granted, the targets might not be there. We saw Darren Waller be a highly targeted tight end, but that's Darren Waller. He's been, since he became this great tight end, a high target tight end, kind of like Evan Ingram, right? He's going to do damage the more targets he gets. So Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson, you could take a shot on either one, right? Theo Johnson, 4th round, adding him in waivers. Daniel Bellinger, probably same thing, got picked up. People kind of hoped for him a couple of years ago. I don't think it's a good situation nonetheless for these tight ends, but if you want to take a shot on one of these guys, if Darren Waller does officially retire, I'm leaning towards Theo Johnson. Obviously, Bellinger's been in the system for 2 years, so he probably has that advantage, but the numbers, if you go and look at Bellinger, they're not that impressive in the receiving game. And then last but not least, we have Washington, where this one, Jane Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback. Obviously, I think Marcus Mariota is a good backup to have on this team. I don't think Marcus Mariota is anything special anymore, unfortunately. But if Jane Daniels is underperforming, right, gets hurt, whatever, Marcus Mariota's in a pretty good system for a quarterback if you think of their offense coordinator, right? A bigger upgrade, even though I think Sam Howell did pretty good with the play calling last year. But you get Cliff Kingsbury in there calling plays, and that's a different story. So Marcus Mariota, I think, is a good backup to own this season. I'm not looking past anything past this season. I think he's a good backup to own, especially if you own Jane Daniels. I think he's a good backup to have. Or if he's available and you're just sitting on some other rookie quarterbacks, like a Spencer Rattler or somebody like that, you're hoping Derek Carr underperforms or gets hurt and then he steps in, Marcus Mariota is probably going to get some starts this season, I would imagine. Running back room, the guy I'm looking at is Chris Rodriguez, right? Austin Eckler, very down year. They have 2 of top 5 running backs in most fumbles last season, in Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson. That's a lot. Austin Eckler, not what he once was, especially in the receiving game. Brian Robinson never really been a big receiving back, kind of been their down back. If Chris Rodriguez gets in there, that's a guy I want, right? I think he's the receiving back on this team. his numbers for the very small sample size he got was pretty good. So I'm looking at him as the guy to kind of, if I'm taking a Washington running back, I'm getting him, but my expectations are he is the RB3 in this offense until these guys start to underperform, which they did last year. Brian Robinson's solid, but I wouldn't say anything special. Obviously, Antonio Gibson was there with Brian Robinson. They bring in Eckler to kind of go with Kingsbury's offense, but I think Chris Rodriguez probably going to be what they want out of Austin Eckler. Wide receiver, this one's another interesting one where you already know Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson are your wide receiver 1 and 2. They draft Luke McCaffrey, brother of Christian McCaffrey. They have Jamison Crowder still there. Diami Brown, that a lot of people liked a few years ago, is still there. And that's a wide receiver room, right? I think Luke McCaffrey's got a really good shot. Obviously, a third-round wide receiver. Doesn't mean anything, though. They could, sit him behind Jamison Crowder, Diami Brown, let him get more comfortable in the offense, especially having a rookie quarterback. Having a rookie wide receiver there, too, especially one that's drafted in third round, isn't always the best. So you want to get more comfortability. Guys that are familiar with the offense, even though it's a new offense, but guys that probably know how to read the offense better than Luke McCaffrey. But if Luke McCaffrey gets those opportunities and is on the field a lot, I think he's a really good asset to have. Another guy that's going third round in rookie draft, so I think he's a solid piece to have. 23 years old, we know what Christian McCaffrey is possible of. Luke McCaffrey's different, obviously he's a wide receiver, but the talent is still there. He's kind of the only other guy other than Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, right? We've been waiting for Terry McLaurin to get a good quarterback to throw him the ball. Jahan Dotson, same thing, been looking for a quarterback to show what his potential is. Luke McCaffrey fits that as well. Tight end is also one that gets interesting. Zach Ertz going to be the tight end 1, but Ben Sinnott is kind of on his tail, right? I think there's a good shot. He's getting 50% or more of snaps halfway through the season. Zach Ertz coming off, a couple of injuries the last few years. Ben Sinnott just kind of seems like second round draft capital. He's got to go after, obviously, going before Tavion Sanders going as a tight end 2 in rookie drafts. I like him, right? I think he's someone that you add to your taxi squad. Don't get too dependent on him playing, right? The biggest thing is a rookie quarterback. You see the stats, obviously. What C.J. Stroud did was amazing, but if you're expecting that out of every rookie quarterback, the history isn't in your favor of rookie quarterbacks. It's not. What Bryce Young did, right? He made Adam Thielen a 1,000-yard receiver. Bryce Young's numbers were terrible. He got a 1,000-yard receiver, though. But even you go look at Joe Burrow, you go look at Trevor Lawrence. You could say Patrick Mahomes, too, even though he sat a year. Justin Herbert, like all these guys, they have flashes, but at the same time, that expectation of them knowing the system and being a good NFL quarterback is very slim to none in that first year, right? The expectations aren't there of being a franchise quarterback year 1. It's learning the system. It's making mistakes and learning from it, right? And those quarterbacks do, right? You see Joe Burrow take the next step. We've seen Justin Herbert take the next step. Patrick Mahomes take the next step. You kind of see someone like Trevor Lawrence still kind of struggle. But nonetheless, they're able to put up numbers in years in the future. So there's a lot of potential mouths to feed with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, a third wide receiver. To be a very, right, like, he's the third pass catcher in this offense, maybe, right? That's not what you want out of a tight end like this, especially rookie. So if you're holding Ben Sinnott, right, you're hoping you get some starts this season, but you're hoping, next year is kind of where he breaks out, right? Kind of do exactly what Trey McBride did, sitting behind Zach Ertz at that. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Had the NFC North video go out yesterday, so if you guys are interested in that, check that one out. And I will see you guys in the next one.